Well, that was interesting. That was quite the spectacle, if I do say so myself, and I get to say that catchphrase once and once only. Welcome to the WTF1 Wrap, powered by MoneyGram. I am your friendly neighborhood, but also slightly disgruntled host, Dre Harrison, and with me, we've got a very special guest alongside us, F1 YouTube royalty. And probably the most calm and rational discourse between an Englishman and a New Zealander since the 2019 Cricket World Cup final. Welcome to the channel, the one, the only, Mr. Josh Revell, everybody.
Thanks for that intro, and thanks for reminding me of the pain of the time that New Zealand sends an 8-toed person into bat for the World Championship.
It's beautiful.
Cheers, bro.
You're very. I had to get that one in. You know, like we're both cricket fans. I mean, I couldn't help myself. And look, the last time we talked about a cricket game, you beat us by 1 run. So I mean, it kind of balances out a little bit, right? But
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I have to get that one in there. But yeah, I've already seen you guys in the chat. I know you guys want to talk about this ridiculous Grand Prix. Now, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. We have a plan normally on these Sunday shows to go through the winners and losers of each, team as we go through the race itself. But I'm calling a little bit of an audible here because we kind of have to talk about just how chaotic the final hour of this race was. And yes, I'm saying an hour. You probably noticed we had to push the show back half an hour because we were still we were still not sure what was going to happen with this race as the show was about to start. So we ended up pushing the whole thing back half an hour to facilitate that. So I know there's a lot of Americans that have stayed up very late to watch this. So thank you if you're coming in and tuning in and staying with us. Your dedication has not gone unnoticed, I promise you. But Josh, where do we even start with that? I mean, it looked like it was going to be a very straightforward Verstappen second win of the year with Hamilton, Alonso trying everything to try and get up to Hamilton. Didn't quite happen. And then Kevin Magnussen hits the outside wall with, 5 laps to go? Something silly like that. And then all hell breaks loose.
That was, yeah. Throughout the whole race, there was this sort of, I don't know, unerring feeling that this race was going to be just bonkers. And yeah, I just didn't know when it was going to happen. Then K-Mag hit the wall, and I figured, well, okay, safety car, this will finish under safety car, whatever. Then the red flag came out. It's like,
oh boy,
okay, here we go.
We're doing this again, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And I figured, you got over 24 blokes on that grid who have a chance to get a big haul of points going down into a corner that funnels and causes accidents at the start of long races, never mind 2 or 3 lap dashes. What could possibly go wrong here? We found out. We got a Spanish and French civil war going on now.
Yeah, who would have thought it? I mean, I'm going to address a few things first and foremost about this because I know a lot of people are mentioning it in the chat and I feel like I'm going to address it now. Regarding Max Verstappen's restart, there are transponders in the cars and there are sensors on the grid boxes. If he was definitely over, they would have gone off. There is no case to answer for here. I know it sounds... I've seen about 75 pictures of a screenshot that looked like it came off a Nokia 3310 regarding him being out of the box. No. I'll give you this. It was very close. I think Max took just about every liberty he could possibly wish to take. I think 3 more inches and we're having a very different conversation. But it's kosher. And I think Gasly further back was also very, very close to going over the line. But again, they have automatic sensors for this sort of thing. They would have gone off if Max was definitely over. So no, there is no case to answer for here. I think a lot of this is purely down to it's Max, and it's very divisive on the old social medias talking about that. But I mean, I wanted to ask you something as well about it, Josh. I mean, do you think Carlos Sainz should have been penalised for that incident? Because I think he was the one that really started that chain of events on that restart at the end.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's a hard one because, some may argue, well, Alonso wasn't affected, and it's it's that incident on its own which he was penalized for, and not for the complete circus that happened behind them. But at the end of the day, what the stewards have is law. We can whinge about it all we like, but as we know from watching the sport for 73, 74 years, whatever it is, we can whinge about it as much as we want, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the blokes in white polo shirts in the top building that determine who wins and who loses. And playing devil's advocate, Sainz probably could have braked a little bit earlier and not, smack the back of Fernando's car. But it is what it is.
We've gone full racing drive. We've gone for it is what it is at the end. The George Russell. It is what
it is.
After the poor man had his car literally resemble England's 2021 Ashes effort in Australia last time around. So, just it was pure fire and not in a good way. So, yeah, I mean, I know people got very tetchy about this as well on Twitter because Sainz essentially was punished for a restart that ultimately didn't count. To clarify on that a little bit, the cars never made it to Sector 1. That's the next reference point off a race start or a race restart. The red flag was pulled before that point. So they have to go back to the last reference point, which was the starting grid. So that's how they formed that final restart behind the safety car. Don't get me wrong, the procession at the end was utterly pointless. As far to me, because the race was done. Like, there was no point in restarting that. I mean, what do you reckon, Josh?
Oh, yeah. This race is an interesting point, though. If you red flag the race and effectively freeze the order and what they were at the restart, and you're effectively saying then that pretty much that restart didn't happen. So why did those 2 laps happen? Culminated the race.
If I slide tackle someone from
behind... Are we asking too many questions here?
No,
Are we asking too many questions?
My logic I've always... The logic I've always applied to this one, Josh, and again, forgive me if we have a difference of opinion on this one. The way I've always seen it, you can tackle someone after the final whistle in a game of football. Just because it wasn't in the actual game doesn't mean you can't be sent off. And, the rules are there, i.e., just because you're going back to a different reference point doesn't mean that incident didn't happen. It did. We all saw it with our own 2 eyes. Now, yes, it didn't affect the running order ultimately because the last reference point was the restart on the grid rather than what would have been Sector 1, but I still think it makes sense that Sainz was still punished for an incident that he committed. But of course, a lot of people are going to go, oh, well, the restart didn't, that restart didn't exist now, so the whole thing just never happened. And that's not really how that works. That's not.
No, but I mean, there's too many grey rules, and there's too many grey areas, Like,
certainly.
How many things in these red flag rules are we going over all the time and just saying this is stupid? Like, it seems every single time we get a red flag, there's always something brought up, apart from the main thing where you get a free pit stop and it jumbles up the order and punishes those.
Yeah, I can't stand that.
Stop before that. There's always something in there where people are crying a foul, and you'll go, well, them's the rules, and it did happen, but I see your point. If you've got a fair argument both ways for something going on in the rules, maybe it's time to have a look at it. I don't know if I'm sort of looking at it a bit wrongly here, but
no,
it was just a chaotic mess, involved with all these red flags.
And look, I think the way the FIA managed this was ultimately fine in the end. I think what we got was I think the wisest possible outcome, but I do admit I'm not the biggest fan of them using the red flag as an entertainment rule. I don't think Albon's incident at the start of this race warranted a red flag. I think they could have cleaned that up under safety car. And I think it was an entertainment call on that front. And then I think the second red flag that we got with Magnussen, that's never a red flag under any circumstances. Like, the tyre was literally by an escape road, and Magnussen's car was by an escape road. Now, I don't know how many of you guys watching along watch IndyCar in the United States, But IndyCar has a very big knack of doing this as well, where they will pull out a red flag if there's like 5 or 6 laps to go, to avoid a race. They don't want a race to finish under a safety car. That seems to be their big overriding mantra, so to speak. And I believe the rule is over there. It's steward's discretion. They can pull a red. The last year's Indy 500 was partially settled by that at the end, because we had a red flag there, I think, with about 5 to go. Which led to Marcus Ericsson winning it. So there's an F1 name from the past for some of you lot out there. But I would say the red flag rule doesn't help, Josh, but I also think the standing restart rule was almost purely brought in for this entertainment purpose, don't you think? Because what other good reason would there be to have standing restarts?
I mean, no. In interest of fairness, like, basically my interpretation of it is, no, you stop the race, you're effectively pausing the race. You're not resetting it. And in a lot of ways, you are resetting the race here, You're allowing free pit stops for these guys. You're getting in a standing start, which, again, there is no good reason other than, well, potentially we could shake up the order here. To implement that kind of thing. Now, admittedly, I do get carried away with it, like with Max running away. You do hold on to that sliver of hope that Lewis is always good with these starts, and Fernando's behind him on the good rubber. Maybe he could pull off a Ralph Schumacher 2002 without the obvious flying into turn 1, and potentially go past him. So there was an element of, well, maybe we can get an upset win here, but you gotta not look at it as Hollywood and be like, are we treating this as pure entertainment or as a sport? And so there's been a lot of gray areas in that lately, very muddy waters. So I don't know, but it seems we always get this conjecture when it comes to red flags. So maybe they need to sit down in a room in their Paris headquarters and be like, okay, should this remain, or maybe should we stop all of this malarkey? Well, no, hang on. All of this malarkey gets more eyes on the product, and generates more income. Why should we change it?
Yeah, the fact that so many people are in here at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. I've seen you guys in the chat, and again, thank you for staying with us. Much appreciated. That we are dedicated to this crap, and there is absolutely, and I've said it on many shows, sport is about juggling integrity and entertainment and thinking of the show. If your sport isn't entertaining, it dies. There's no getting around that. But you've also got to have the integrity to make it a sport in its own right. So, again, it's a constant juggling act. We saw it here today. We saw it at Monza last year with Daniel Ricciardo's car dying, and the fact that, you could have easily red flagged that scenario, and we could have maybe had a standing restart there. Instead, that race ended under yellow. And I believe that was only like the 9th or 10th race that's ever finished in F1 under yellow flag. So it doesn't happen very often. But I think you're absolutely right as well. It gets to a point where races become absolute crap shows sometimes, and it confuses people, it raises emotion. But that's also the beauty of sport to a degree, and I think that's why we're all watching here right now. So, I think there's absolutely a valid debate you can have about this one. And look, I'm not going to claim I have like the FIA sporting regulations like tattooed on my chest, like Prison Break or something like that. But at the same time, there is viable explanations for a lot of this. It's just whether they should be or not, and I think people will argue whether or not these things should happen. But should we get into the winners and losers a little bit, Josh? Shall we?
Let's do that.
Let's do that before we all end up losing our minds over this. So I can't remember the last time a race had 3 red flags either. That's something. I saw Jason in the chat mention that. I think it's the first F1 race with 3 red flags. I can't remember one recently with that. Someone start googling if you can. I would, but I'm a bit busy. But I'd love to see what you guys think. Again, guys in the chat, send in your questions, and we might have time for a couple later on in the show. Also, send in what your favourite overtake was as well, because we get to award the MoneyGram Send of the Race. I've got a suggestion in mind for that, but I'll get to it when I get to the Haas section later. But we've in order of the teams I wanted to go for. I've jumbled up the order a little bit just to keep things fresh. Let's talk about McLaren first. And for all those guys that have been questioning McLaren, which is fair given they've had a pretty wretched start to the season, I think I'm right in saying double points, 6th and 8th. McLaren's on the board, everybody. Yes. Oh man, that was
keep these celebrations up. A complete, absolute miracle that they had any chance at all happening. But yeah, it's just like, what was it though that through all the melee at the start, all of a sudden Norris and Pastry were bolted up to the top. Not the top. Well, what am I talking about? In the points, on the fringes of the points at least. And Lando was driving a fantastic race. He was keeping Checo behind him for 2 or 3 laps before eventually the DRS kicked in. But, it was still a damn good race. And for them both to get points when they've got that absolute lemon of a car right now, I mean, absolute praiseworthy work.
Absolutely.
Even though half the grid died.
Look, there is always a benefit of keeping your nose dry and staying out of trouble, because you like Formula One will throw up one chaos race a year. So yeah, it's this might be the one. Who knows? I'm not fully convinced on their overall pace as a car yet, and I still don't think it's particularly great. I mean, Norris had a real haulix just trying to get past Nico Hülkenberg, and that was a fun highlight towards the end of what we thought was going to be the end of the race. Hülkenberg, I think Hulk was a bit naughty in how he was defending that position. I think making a lot of multiple swerves, saw the moves to try and hold on to that position in the end. But Norris, this is what he does. He gets the most out of a donkey of a car. He finishes 6th. McLaren have a clean weekend, and they're actually pretty good. So Norris 6th, and Piastri gets points in his home debut, his first ever single-seat race in his home country of Australia, and he's in the points. Drove well, and honestly, I think he was my MoneyGram send of the race for that move he had on, I believe it was Esteban Ocon. It was a very, very, almost side-by-side through the I think it's now turn 9 and 10, between the 4 DRS zones we now have around here, which is crazy in of itself. But, I mean, I know, do you notice how many Piastri fans were down there, Josh? Because I know I know you've been to Albert Park before. I know it's reasonably short for you, given you're from New Zealand, but close enough, right?
I mean, yeah, close enough. It's only about 3 or 4 hour plane trip, I think it is. Which, to some people, like 3 or 4 hours. No, you're only just there, right? Well, it is how it is. That's how it is down here. But no, there would be a large contingent of Piastri fans down there. Even last year, we were still with Alpine. Yeah. It was funny. Last year at Alpine, they were selling Alpine shirts with Piastri and his number on the back of the shirts.
Football style.
Exclusive sale.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an exclusive sale sort of thing. And I'm kicking myself. I should have got one now. I could have sold it as sort of premium, just like the what could have been.
A moment in sports history. Piastri in Alpine gear.
Exactly. But, there were still people, and he only just won the F2 championship then, wasn't totally, confirmed for an F1 seat at that point. But there was still a large amount of people that clamored around him.
Oh, yeah.
And now, obviously, that he's in McLaren and, he's got that F1 seat. He's got all the attention around him through all kinds of means. Yeah, I would imagine, the Aussies over there would have been looking at the McLaren merch they had for Ricciardo and be like, well, could still use it this year. We've still got a boy in there.
Discount sale on the website.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go there last year, it was just heaps of yellow. I'm going colorblind. Orange hats around the place. Just heaps of McLaren merch everywhere. So yeah, there's definitely a dedicated fan base there. I mean, there would be. It's the hometown boy. But it is good when there's those struggles going on with McLaren right now that they can get points, especially at that location.
Absolutely, and I want to get the chat involved because there's a lot. I know I've seen there's a lot of Josh fans in the chat. I'm trying to get to you where I can. Thanks to all you guys for coming over, much appreciated. JJ13 says, Josh, massive fan. What was your opinion on Lando's overtake on Nico?
Amazing. I don't think I particularly remember it, but amazing.
The
race was a blur. There was heaps of passing going on, which was great, especially in the midfield, and heaps of chaos in between. I know that there were some moves, especially going on the outside of. This is why I hate the debates of just number the corners and don't name them.
You're right.
If you name a corner at Silverstone, you know where you are. But if you were to number, it's just like, so now that's where I am. I'm trying to figure out where on the circuit they were. But then there were some good moves everywhere. I don't think I can pinpoint a particular move down, but still, I think just in an overall sense, Lando was just fantastic today.
Absolutely. Definite winners in my book as well. A couple of guys in the chat have been are still talking about the Verstappen grid box. Crofty is just confirmed on Sky Sports F1. He was definitely in. So there is no case to answer for. And apparently Merck's the same. We're not even going to chase it up. So as far as we're concerned on this show, case closed on that one. Let's get into AlphaTauri next up. AlphaTauri. On the one hand, I am really happy for Yuki Tsunoda. He's got a point in 10th in the end, and there is no man on this grid that has done more to earn less than Yuki Tsunoda. God bless him, he is trying. That car is a donkey. I am adamant that it's the worst car in the sport now. At least McLaren, now that they've got a clear run, has shown some pace. This AlphaTauri is not a good car at all. No, I don't think De Vries was down in 15th in the end, but Tsunoda could have been 5th. If that result had held up on that restart, it would have been 5th, which would have been a miracle result for AlphaTauri. But I still think just getting a car in the points is giving them winner status for me, Josh. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think Yuki was excellent today again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I said at the start of the year that Marco's probably going to be looking for blood because he's a person that loves some musical chairs.
Oh, yes.
And, Yuki was struggling a little bit just for consistency. And I was thinking, you're going to have a dude who's going to come in here with a wealth of expectation. You got a dude coming in who's a karting world champion, Formula E world champion, was described by, I think, was the team manager of CRG Karts as the best driver he'd seen go up to Formula One, all kinds of hype around that, and he's handled it so far beautifully. Meanwhile, De Vries is kind of drowning, or in some case, flying through the damn air by not getting enough room. And, Yuki's doing everything he can right now to keep that seat, which, you'd love to see. So, yeah, I think he did get as much out of that car today as what he possibly could have, because that AlphaTauri is just not good, to put it diplomatically.
They're not great.
Yeah, all big kudos to Yuki. For De Vries, I've got no sympathy whatsoever. The dude just did not drive well at all today. Sounds a bit harsh, but I mean, yikes. There were some instances where you looked at what he was doing on track or where he was, and I was just thinking, you do think sometimes, is Marco getting buyer's remorse on this guy?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think the reason they were going after Colton Herta so hard was because there was no academy driver left to potentially fill in. Now they've potentially got names in the chamber like Isaac Hadjar or maybe Dennis Hauger. Liam Lawson is out in Japan right now for Super Formula. So they've got options now, but I think Tsunoda is more than holding up his end of the deal. To be fair to Nick De Vries, he was punted by Logan Sargent. It's worth pointing out, so that wasn't on Nick. Finishing 2 laps down, he was a casualty out there. But Tsunoda, I think, is absolutely holding up his end of the deal for AlphaTauri so far this season. 11th, and now 10th. That car is not good, and I think Tsunoda is driving very, very hard, given the car's a donkey. So, I mean, if he ends up leading this team and is spearheading them from a leadership role, I don't see how Red Bull can move on from him. Like, he's doing what he needs to do to keep his job, in my opinion. And
You say that, but
This is also true.
How many times in the history at Toro Rosso and AlphaTauri has the driver been doing fine? Like was Buemi doing any bad? Was El Jaswari doing anything wrong?
That's true.
Was Vern doing anything bad? I mean, sometimes Marco doesn't really like putting the right person in the car. Oh, look at this. I've got Antonio Felix da Costa, the best possible option for me at this time. No, Brendan Hartley.
Yeah.
I've still got a bit of beef over that, but my point is that sometimes you have to sort of second guess what Marco's going to do because you never know. There may be a random mid-season dropping like it was with Scott Speed, although that was kind of a long time coming and before the frackers in the back of the pit lane. But it will be interesting because if Yuki continues to go well and if De Vries continues to drown, you got to think, okay, what can happen here? Or if there comes a point where De Vries finds his form, you just never know. I've just learned that, especially with this outfit, you just never know. So
absolutely.
We'll keep tabs on it, but so far Yuki's doing everything he needs to do.
Absolutely. Let's get into Alfa Romeo next up, and oh boy, Zhou ended up in the points in the end. He ended up 9th, so that's 2 more very vital points. I mean, I mentioned it on Saturday's show. I think the top 4, top 5 teams are pretty well established at the moment, to me. So I think points in the second half are really going to be hard to come by. So Zhou getting another couple of points is big. And again, I think this is like the second week in a row where I think he was the stronger Alfa Romeo driver overall over Valtteri. I think Zhou is starting to come into his own a little bit. Josh, how do you feel about it?
It's strange because I've always sort of seen Zhou as someone who kind of finds his feet very fast. That he's normally on it relatively quickly compared to other drivers. So at some point during last season, I thought, oh, okay, is this about where he's going to be? But now he's starting to, definitely establish himself at Alfa Romeo more, especially since he just beat Valtteri in Valtteri's home race.
Absolutely.
Well, adopted home race.
Adopted, yeah. Second coming.
Yeah, but I mean, Zhou definitely did have a good race. There were, parts where he was definitely showing what he was capable of and why he definitely deserves to be there. Valtteri was kind of invisible in this race almost.
And normally that's a good thing because normally he goes invisible and he ends up 8th and it's like, oh, Valtteri, okay, good, we'll take that. But
not when you get double-digit position.
Exactly. Like it's very much it's great if you're 7th, it's not so great if you're 13th sort of day. But I'm going to give them another winner's tag as well on the day because I think points for Alpha in general is almost certainly a win for them. I think these 8th, 9th, 10th place fights are going to be very, very important over the course of the season. And yeah, I think that's definitely an overall plus for Alfa Romeo because I don't think they've got the pace to score points on raw ability at the moment. So again, keep your nose dry. Don't do anything crazy. You have days like today where they come out and they reap the rewards, and that's 2 very precious points for Alfa Romeo. So I think that's a plus for them as well. Haas,
oh boy,
who allegedly are apparently thinking about protesting the result because Hulkenberg, it's worth looking at because if they do go back with Sainz getting a time penalty, we're talking about the miracle of all miracles, a Hulkenberg podium finish. Could potentially be on the line here.
Yes.
So
that was what I was thinking. I was just like when in the red flag scenario, in that 38th red flag that we had.
Yeah, roughly.
And they came back to the pits, and the order was what it was. Obviously, we saw the crash at that point, and it was obvious that Alonso gave him, a whole US state's worth of space. And Sainz still nicked his rear. You just knew that, there was going to be penalties coming, especially if the order remained what it was. And then once you've mathed that into your head, that you looked at Hulkenberg in 4th, it's like,
huh? What?
No way. I'm in an alternative reality here. This can't possibly happen, especially after I said earlier on this year, I'm not putting any money on this being a potential, results. But I mean, it just about was. You had to feel for the guy because it's like if the result did remain what it was and the order was frozen, it would be a podium for Hulkenberg. But of course, this curse strikes again.
The racing gods will not allow Hulkenberg a podium, even though that might be the closest he's ever come in his almost 200 race career now for Nico Hulkenberg. But look, it's a shame for K-Mag, because K-Mag was what started this entire chaos with, although I do find it funny, he's still technically classed as a finisher, because he did get to 90% distance. 6 laps down, but he's still technically in 17th. But it's, look, a 7th for Hulkenberg is still a really good result for Haas here, and it's still 6 points. So, that's still a really good day for Haas in what, again, I think this bottom half of the table bar fight that we potentially have going on here. So again, I'm gonna put Haas in the winners column here, and I don't think that protest will lead to anything if it allegedly happens. I don't think they've got any real case to determine that they can overturn what we've already seen. But I
might as well try.
Why not?
You gotta try.
Nothing to lose, right? You might as well. But at the same time, I think it's still a dub for Haas to get 6 points on the weekend. That's a plus, surely. That's a huge result for Haas. So yeah, I'm putting them in the winners column as well. Oh, Alpine. Oh, heartbreak for the Alpine. Also, I'll quickly pause here to say as well. Again, guys in the chat, I know guys mentioned it. We have absolute confirmation. There is no grid spot penalty for Verstappen at all. We promise you. I know you guys are heated about it, but I promise you, there is no case to answer. He was absolutely in the box, and so no arguments there to answer for. But we got to talk about Alpine, Josh, and Gasly was running, I want to say, 5th, pretty much for the vast majority of this race. That would have been a massive result for Alpine. And then they've got a chance of getting both cars right up the order on that final restart. And then Gasly turns into Ocon. Oh.
That was one of the most catastrophically French things I'd ever seen in the history of Formula One. And there have been some French things that happened here.
Friendly fire.
Just, friendly fire will not be tolerated in COD games, although in the sport of Formula One, all bets are off.
Oh yeah,
it's just I mean, like, it did seem like that at some point this was going to happen, although this was not so much them fighting over territory. They just met in the wrong place at the wrong time. But obviously when they had that shot looking down towards, there was chaos and smoke and stuff and debris flying. It's like, okay, who died? And Alpine came out of the mist, and it's like, oh well, that sucks, because whoever it was just had their great race demolished. Then they went back to the incident, and it was both Alpines. I'm like, no way! It didn't even take 3-4 races before this happened. And like, the thing that's going to be like, the thing that's funny is that Gasly had a great race, running 5th, and he was really hanging on to the back of Sainz within DRS range for a lot of the time. If he kept his nose clean at the restart, he was looking at a way good result.
Possible podium.
And then a possible podium, especially if the two Spaniards still butted heads then. And then it just all went up in like all this chaotic smoke, and just like, wow, okay, like,
yeah,
this is how it ends. But I don't think just a pure retirement is the biggest thing for Pierre Gasly, because how many penalty points does he have?
10. And I've just seen, I've just seen on social media, he said to the media that he's apologized to Ocon. He's taken full responsibility for the incident.
He's got to pull out all the stops, otherwise he won't need a plane ticket to Baku.
Yeah, he's on 10. But for those who don't know, Gasly is on 10 penalty points. General rule of thumb: if you cause a collision in an F1 race, it tends to be 2 penalty points. 2 more would mean a race ban for Pierre Gasly, because you're only allowed 12 in a calendar year in F1. It's a rolling 12-month calendar. I don't believe Gasly starts losing points until after Baku, so this would be a potential race ban if this
What
race.
timing?
What
timing?
I know. So we could be looking at a race ban if the stewards decide to look into it after the race. We'll have to wait and see. We probably won't get an answer on that over the course of the stream, but do keep your tabs on the news, on the website, WTF1.com as well. We might get some updates on that going on, but I don't think the stewards normally take media confessions into account unless they're called into the office. We'll have to wait and see, but if Gasly's taken full accountability, which, in all fairness to him, he's done the honourable thing, it could be a race ban, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. It's an obvious L for Alpine in the end, because just sadly, neither of them made the flag. 13th and 14th in the end, when they were looking at potentially 2 cars in the top 5. That is a golden opportunity for Alpine gone. And yeah, so apparently, according to Darth Trenton in the chat, he's been called into the stewards, but no verdict yet. So again, we'll have to wait and see. We have to wait and see. Stewards are.
Who do they put in then? If he's banned, who do they put in? Because does Jack Doohan have enough? Does he have a super license at all?
I don't.
Because they made him the reserve driver, haven't they?
He is the reserve driver. I don't.
But then again, so was Esteban Gutierrez for Mercedes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Doohan's got a super license. I don't think he's got enough points yet. Personally, off the top of my head, they'd have to call on they'd have to probably borrow someone's reserve. It's funny because they had a deal to borrow Piastri if need be, and he ain't there no more. Ain't that funny? They'll probably have to borrow some. According to AJ, they reckon Doohan has got enough super license points. So apparently,
it's about whether he has the super license at all, though. You know,
did he apply for one? I'm sure he did.
I'm not 100% sure. I'm gonna get some messages saying, yeah, he's got one. It's like, okay, that's cool. I just don't quite know.
So,
because the FIA, for some reason, are as secretive with the super license points tally as what the KGB would be. But for some reason, it's a closely guarded secret. For some reason.
Yeah, I think most likely they borrow Mick Schumacher. I think that's the likely option.
Potentially. Or maybe Van Dorn, I don't know.
Van Dorn, yeah.
There's got to be someone out there.
So some
surely
some handshake agreements might have to come around here, and we all know Alpine. Nothing ever important has been determined by handshake agreements in that team recently. Anyway, Ferrari. Oh dear. Honts, super honts. Oh man. What a disaster.
People will be peering into my camera and they could see the pain in my eyes.
Are you a Ferrari man, Josh?
Well, yes, I am, but it's also just hilarious because my flatmate is Italian.
Oh no!
So every weekend we just go through the thing. He doesn't even. He's not even emotional anymore. He just laughs.
Oh,
and I mean. At some point, you just got to laugh.
He's at the bargaining stage then, clearly.
No, he's at acceptance. He's gone through every single stage.
He's gone through all of it. Yeah.
He's at the stage where he's gone to that old racing rhetoric. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Perfect.
I mean, just like that was, there were points last year where you just saw Leclerc heading towards certain doom, whether it would be through plumes of smoke or, spinning backwards toward a barrier. And I saw that Ferrari rotate, and I just sort of sat there and froze. I'm like, I'm not going to get a nice thing in life, aren't I? I'm not going to get my Leclerc World Championship. It's not going to happen because this just keeps on happening. Nope. And it's just once he went backwards into the sandbox, the car stopped. It's like, he's not going anywhere. This is as big an L as you possibly can get in a race. And, Lance couldn't go in. Lance can't just disappear. Yeah. You can't blame him. So
I think it's just one of those. Charles after the race said it was just a racing incident. He wasn't bitter about it at all. I think it was just one of those lap one deals that it's a free wide, and Charles is committed. I think it was Stroll that had committed to this deep lunge around the outside, and then he just had nowhere to go. And it's just one of those ones. Really, it's unfortunate because no one's really to blame. It's just one of them things, and that put Charles out. And then, of course, we've talked a lot about Sainz already. And so it's a shame for Carlos, because I thought Carlos drove pretty darn well up until the chaos of the end of that race, and I liked how racy he was. I liked some of the overtakes he put down, and I was prepared to be aggressive, and then made just one liberty too many on that final restart, and it's cost him points. I like the fact that afterwards with the media, he'd already basically gone for the old Jose Mourinho, I prefer not to speak, because if I speak, I'm in big trouble, sort of vibe here.
Yeah, he was bargaining hard when he got the
news
no. Just like no, this can't happen. No, you have to try, please, no, please. This is like, I don't think they're gonna budge, mate.
Yeah,
no matter how much you bargain, these guys don't like to budge.
Yeah, the time penalty knocked Sainz down to 12th in that final parade lap procession, unfortunately. So yeah, 0 points on the weekend for Ferrari. That is an unmitigated disaster. Obvious L for Ferrari on the day. I mean, I feel a bit bad for him because, 9 times out of 10, Sainz probably gets away with that minor wheel bang. Unfortunately, Alonso went round, and then the nature of the rule book meant he got nailed a little bit on that final time penalty because end of race. It's just unfortunate time, and then Leclerc was just. I almost want to give Ferrari a wash on this one because their drivers had the results are bad, but it wasn't really on them. I don't think. There's no obvious evidence of Honsin, as we like to say on social media these days. So
not at all.
It
was a strong pace actually.
Yeah,
Carlos had strong pace during the whole race.
They were running,
and then it just turned Ferrari.
Yeah,
it's something that over the last year we just come used to, where it's just just an absolute sea of chaos and just stuff that leaves you just wondering why are we in this scenario. Ferrari should be up there, and instead that Hans song just plays in my head.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I'm actually gonna give Ferrari a slander exemption on this one because I don't think a lot of this was on there. Maybe again the Sainz Alonso clash on the restart, but even then, another day he probably doesn't even get a time penalty for that. And I think pace-wise, he was running with Hamilton and Alonso pretty much most of the way through. So I think there's some positives to take away from the weekend. It's just a shame they're going to have no points to show for it, which is really unfortunate.
Exactly.
Let's get into Mercedes, and look, Hamilton. I've never seen Hamilton, a man who's won 103 Grand Prix. So happy to finish in second.
He was pumped. He was pumped after. You could see the helmet motions and everything. It's just like.
Second.
Race is over, Lewis. I'm glad you're happy, but race is over. Calm down, boy. It is good though. It is good though. We do take it with a bit of caution because we saw this at some points last year where there's potentially momentum going on here, and there's all this hype, and then they get to the next round and they're a second down. So I'm just sort of paying caution to the wind almost, but the pace throughout the weekend was surprisingly good in qualifying and in the race. Just a shame that George was hampered first by the red flag and then by his Aaron flamethrower at the back end, not the back end of the race, but the back end portions. And he was making strides, after that unfortunate thing. It's like, okay, he can get himself back into contention here. And then they had that shot down the straight and there was just whiffs of smoke. I'm like, oh, what's happened here? Then here comes Jorge with his rear mounted flamethrower. It's just like, I'm not a mechanic, but I'm not entirely certain that this should be happening.
No,
you need to, and booted him out of the race. It's like, well, when it rains, it pours, doesn't it?
Yeah. I still think this is a dub for Mercs because they'll happily take second, and I think again their pace was pretty great all weekend long. Hamilton, I mean, I don't think people were like, oh well, Red Bull's so dominant, and yes, they are, but I don't know how much Max was holding back during the actual race running itself.
Yeah.
I know he had about 10 seconds in hand before he went for a little lawnmower trip towards the end.
I mean, not just that, mate. Not just that. It just seemed whenever he wanted to establish that gap, he just did it. Like it
Yeah.
seemed it seemed there was a lot of
Control.
management, and that's the problem when you give a driver like him or a driver like Lewis a car like that. It's just like, how do you beat that? It's almost impossible. But still, like, obviously we're down on the ground here with Merc. It's encouraging for sure, and Lord knows what would have happened if George's car didn't go bust on him.
Yeah.
If whether it would have been at the start of the race, whether he may have been able to defend position, which probably wouldn't have happened given how much of a rocket that damn Red Bull is. But at the very least, he would have been there for some of the restarts, and like. You just need to bend a blade of grass in the past to change the course of history. You put another car in that mix, and who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, we may not have had the Spanish and French civil wars happen. We may have had green running to the end of the race. Anything could have happened, but that's what it is. Encouraging pace for Merc. Hopefully it continues because, good Lord, we need good battles in this championship.
We do, and yeah, like I said, never seen Hamilton so happy to finish second. Russell was again great in qualifying. Out-qualified Hamilton for the third time in a row. He's looked pretty good all weekend. Shame again, his car caught fire again. He was absolutely nailed on that first safety car. That was really unfortunate. But again, that's the sport for you sometimes. But yeah, I think a part of this is also Mercs are very melodramatic sometimes, or it's like, oh yeah, we got the worst car in human history. Like it's going to take us a year to catch up to Red Bull. It's dreadful. It's all bad, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're second, great, wonderful. This is encouraging. This is great signs. We're pushing on to take on Red Bull.
FP2, it's all FP2. It's all doom and gloom. Then they just find half a second, or whatever.
Tremendous
I mean,
progress.
even in the race, even in the race. I mean, Lewis will be like, my tires are dead. Sets fast slap. It's just like, I don't know if it's a sort of motivational thing or whatever the heck. But I mean, hey, the important thing is that they're there or thereabouts.
Right. Fernando Alonso, and we're going to talk about Aston Martin next. Oh boy, I had to brief. Got a bit nervous for him. Obviously, they could have been one of the big victims of that final restart. Alonso was spun out, but again, they were able to overturn that in the end, and they went back to the grid. Alonso got the car home, third and fourth for Aston Martin, which I want to say is their best ever result since they formed under the Aston Martin brand. I think. I don't think they've had a better day than third and fourth. So. I think it's their best ever day as a team.
Yes.
Since the rebrand. So I'm pretty sure third and fourth is their best ever result. And obvious stub in the book for Aston Martin. They're at it again. They might be a little bit concerned that Alonso maybe wasn't quite close enough to give Hamilton a proper fight in the end, but they are still on par with the factory team on the same power unit as them. If there's any more confirmation left that's needed, Aston Martin are here. They are second, debatably second or third best team on the grid now. No question.
I needed to Wikipedia something here for a moment because that's the tiny YouTuber I am.
Of course.
I just needed to check the last time Fernando got 3 podiums in a row, and that was 2013. He gets one more. He gets one more at the Baku Bouncy Castle, and then you've got the best streak he's had in a while, and it's good to see him in a good car again.
It is nice.
I tell you, that's it is nice, and he's maximizing as much out of it right now as I think anyone possibly can. So Lancelot is hanging in there with Fernando. That's all you can really ask of him, is they at least sort of keeps there or thereabouts. I mean, there's no shame in not being able to beat him because not many people can. So it's good, encouraging stuff. And again, thankfully they were able to retain their positions and not completely implode in that last safety car restart. But safety car restart. What am I talking about? Red flag restart. Definitely a dub for Aston this week.
100%.
Very lucky to do so, though.
100%. And I'm really happy for Lance Stroll, given he had to come into the season with, he showed a lot of adversity to come back from those 2 broken wrists at the start of the season. And, fourth's a really nice result for him. So, if he keeps backing up Fernando, that's absolutely fine. And I don't think anyone's reasonably expecting him to challenge Fernando week in, week out. But, that's a great result for Aston Martin. That's do the math here, Dre, 27 points. That's a great haul for Aston Martin. And they are here to stay. I think they are going to be well in this fight for second in the Constructors' Championship this year. And biggest turnaround year on year since probably Williams when the turbo hybrids began. When they went from, 8th or something to 3rd. So, Aston Martin, huge steps in the right direction again. We've had just about every kind of race you can imagine, and Aston Martin's been up there with the best of the non-Red Bull cars, if not the best of the non-Red Bull cars. So, again, just brilliant all round for Aston Martin. They will happily take that 3rd and 4th all day long. We got to finish up on Red Bull. Kind of goes without saying, really. It's another obvious start. Perez ended up 5th in the end after all that carnage from the back of the field, from the pit lane even. So I think that's well earned in the end. I think that's a good result to come from the back to finish 5th. That's not too much harm done. Verstappen, dominant again. The way he just drove around Lewis like that to take the lead and then just never really look back. It's car and driver in near perfect time. I say near perfect because we saw the lawnmower trip towards the end of that race, so maybe a little bit of a lack of concentration towards the end a little bit, but just dominant again, Josh. These guys are dialed in.
Yeah, just clinic. That's again where I say that's why I really don't like whenever Max or Lewis gets a car like that, because it's how do you beat that? And
it's very hard.
When George went back through the pack due to that red flag, and Lewis was left at the front, it's okay, how long is it going to be before he breezes past? He went past. It's well, okay, I guess it's down to Lewis and Fernando now for some kind of who will get second. I guess a little bit depressing because we obviously want to see the battle for the win, but also Max isn't doing anything wrong. He's doing as well as he can. He's
driving brilliantly.
He just so happens to have the best car on the grid, but I mean the dude's just driving beautifully. Whenever again he's not doing the lawn mowing. So absolute clinic today by Max. Couldn't really ask for too much more, apart from better starts maybe. And Checo just flew up the field. It was great. It was really entertaining to see that. So again, Red Bull are just in a sort of fantasy land right now where they're just enjoying every moment of this trip.
Yeah, I don't think there's any obvious sign that they will be caught before the end of the season. I think they are absolutely going to run away with this, and Verstappen is going to be very, very hard to beat. I think it looked like he was in more or less complete control of that race all the way through. His first ever win in Australia, funnily enough, as well. It's taken him long. I think it's his 8th Australian Grand Prix now, and his first time he's actually gone away with the W. So congrats to him. Another dominant display from Red Bull. 1st and 5th on the day. Obviously, they're going in the winner's column. I think it kind of goes without saying. But overall, what a race. I not necessarily for all the right reasons either, but it was certainly a lot dramatic. There'll be a lot of conversations about the way this was officiated and stewarded, but overall, I think you can't say it wasn't dramatic, and you probably can't say it wasn't entertaining to at least some degree, but I think there'll be many conversations about that going forward. Before we get out of here, Josh, tell the good people where they can find you. I know it sounds silly because you do tremendous work and you've already got an incredible following, but in case anybody is new, because we all know, I'll say it on every video is someone's first. Tell the good people where they can find you, my friend.
Right on. So my name should be somewhere in this title or description.
Oh, it's in the box. So don't worry.
That's how you know. That's how you know how to spell the name. Josh Revell, however you want to say it. I'm all good. Don't get fussy on that. Produce just videos mainly on Formula One, but also just on any kind of weird, wacky stories in motorsport, and there's no shortage of that at all. Everything in between. Love doing this stuff. And yeah, gets to see me talk belligerently about my passion out there, all the good and bad things about it, and there's plenty on both sides. Yeah, so release every week, Thursday 5 p.m. UK time. Release I try to, and yeah, find my channel. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Also, I saw this multiple times in the chat as well. That I was sort of saying that it's great to know that Josh is in fact a real person, rather than just rather than just.
Yes, I exist. My
he does
cake
exist.
painting is not my real being. Yes.
So you're not one of these new fancy fangled VTubers. Then good to know.
Oh, good God, no way, mate.
Look, we'll put all the links in the description. Please, if you haven't already, give him a WTF1 bump from us. Like, it's not like Josh really needs the help, to be honest, because I've been.
I mean, I take everything I can get, mate.
Of course,
seriously.
I'm personally subscribed to Josh on my channel. I will humbly say here, he's one of the finest storytellers we have in this community. We haven't got many of them, but for some reason they all seem to like dominate from like the Oceania part of the world with him in perspective. Another guy I really want to do a show with at some point. So it seems like Australia and New Zealand are leading the way, and for once it's not in just cricket and rugby either. So apparently F1 videos, they're right up there as well. So please subscribe to them if they haven't already. You know, give them a WTF1 bump from us. Thank you all for watching. I just want to say as well, I know the timings haven't been great. Australia, I know there's a lot of us from the US and a lot of us from the UK that watch us. Thank you all so much for tuning in over the weekend. I know it's not the easiest time in the world to do it. And I know it's not the most convenient, but you guys' loyalty and dedication is always fantastic. So thank you all so much for that. Much appreciated. There'll be plenty of content coming on the channel regarding this race. I promise you. I've literally been buzzed about it during this recording about what's coming next. So short standalone vids. We'll dust off Jack Nichols from the back as well to get on for a video as well. One for you Formula E fans out there. We love Jack, so more on that as well coming up soon. Thank you once again for watching. Stick around for the WTF1 Race Review podcast. Harry Benjamin's going to be fronting that as well. That'll be up in the next 24 hours or so. He's got some cool guests coming on for that as well. But it's been a great weekend. Thank you all for tuning in. Much appreciated. If you liked it, please subscribe. Please subscribe to Josh as well. And of course, Break from yesterday. He was fantastic. Go subscribe to him as well. We'll definitely go try and get Break back on at some point because he was incredible. So again, thanks everyone for watching. I've been Dre Harrison. He's been Josh Revell, which is a really cool thing I get to say on this channel. I never get to do that. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys soon. Sayonara. Take care.